Good evening. I'm Apostle T.B. Walker. Certainly glad to have you here for our Thursday Night Live Bible study. Listen, I want to get directly into the study. Here's what it says. This is out of the book of Revelation, chapter 5, verse number 1. And it says, "And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals." That's it. That's the study for tonight. Now, this is major, though. You know, things are out of control when John is writing this letter. I mean, what's going on in Rome with the lots. And when I say Rome, I don't mean just Rome itself as a city, but I mean throughout all of the Roman territories. There is so much persecution. Christians are really taking a huge hit, and things seem out of control. John now is on the Isle of Patmos. He is out there himself as an exile. And this is a place that you go to die. This is not a place that is just like a prison, that's some place that's remote. But this is a place that is meant for you to die a slow, agonizing death. There's very little vegetation there. There's salt water all around. There's very little fresh water. Survival is just hard if you're really, really in good shape. If you're young enough, if you're strong enough, survival is going to be just really a rugged, rigid time, but it's something that you can probably survive if you have enough ingenuity and know-how. But as an old man here, this is just a death sentence. So starvation and just dehydration, the weather, there are all manner of things that will just be the death of a man like John. But in the midst of all of this, he gets a revelation, and he gets a revelation about God's plan and what God is planning to do. Now, this is not the whole plan of God, because nobody could encompass or even take on the whole plan of God. But John is now, as we get in chapter 5, he's shifting. He's talking to us about the 7 churches. He's talking to us about God's plan for his own people. He begins to talk to us about the throne. And now John is shifting, and he's talking to us about the majesty and the righteousness of the King of the world. This is Jesus. Now, remember, the emphasis here is not on the content of the scrolls. There's one who's sitting on the throne that he sees, right? He says, I saw in his right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll. So he says, I'm seeing this person who is sitting, but in his right hand, in the strong right hand, there is this writing, there is this scroll, there is this papyrus document that he has in his hand. And the key here is not the scroll itself, not right away, but the key is that the one who's holding this scroll. Now, we learn a little bit about what's in the scroll later on, but we are not told all the details of what's in the scroll. We know it is a papyrus roll, but we also realize, as we extrapolate other things that we'll read later, that this is God's plan for the world, that he alone has the title deed to. When we look at this, understand that John is getting a prayer answered. God, what's going on? Who's in control? And what you'll see here is that God is unveiling something, that he has a plan, that things are not out of control, that things are working according to plan, that the reality is, because things are difficult does not mean that things are not working according to plan. Because things don't work out in our own minds, we sometimes juggle things around to try to defend God with a plan that you cannot defend, because you do not truly know. And God does not need us to defend his plan. We defend the faith that we have in the things that God has revealed to us. This is a revealing. And part of this revelation is that God has a plan. Now, it's not that God is going to tell us every detail of the plan, but there's now a shift in the focus from the throne to the plan, but the man who has the plan. John starts out talking about the throne, but he now begins to talk about the scroll that's held in the enthroned hand and the enthroned Christ. When you look at who Jesus is, that is where we as believers get our comfort from. The fact that God has a plan, but it's not some willy-nilly plan. It's written inside and on the back. Now, this means that this scroll is unusual. That's not the way the scrolls are usually written. There's usually only one side. There's no generally turning a scroll around and writing on the back. But this was not common writing. What John was getting revealed was not something that was just regular. And so the writing here on the both sides of it means that there's a lot of information there. There's nothing that's outside the purview of God. There's nothing that goes on that God is not intently involved in. There are things that happen. And it's like, well, God is not worried about that. God doesn't have any, God's not dealing with that. Listen, this plan is so intricately detailed that it lets us know that there are no details that go undone in our lives. There's no shoestring. There's no color of the shoestring. There's no school that we go to. There's no job that we get that we don't get. There's no car that we buy. There's no motorcycle that we ride that God is not intricately involved in every spinning of the spoke on your bike. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, are not some aloof God who does not know who has to react to things that are going on. Oh, let me move this out of the way. You're about to go into this ditch. Let me help you out of that way. No, God has already moved your bike before you were born. God has already changed the trajectory of the earth before you were ever established in the earth to make all things work together for good, simply because we love God, but also because we are called according to his purpose. The reality is being called means that we are assigned to particular places and time, which means that everything, the light that is on, is assigned to be on at the time that God has assigned it. When you are meant to be plunged in darkness, guess what? There's no light that could shine in a place that God has ordained to be dark. So when you begin to look at this, God, John has to understand this is not about, God, are you going to take us out of this? When are you going to redeem us from this? What's going to happen? God has a redemption plan, but he doesn't tell us the date. God has a salvation plan, right? But he doesn't tell us even all the details of that. He leaves some of that is vague for us, that we do know will be justified, that will be glorified, but we don't know just how. We don't know what the glorified body is going to be like. We don't know what the throne room judgment actually will entail. Like, we don't know everything. We don't know what these mansions that are in heaven, what they look like. We cannot tell you, but we have a understanding that God knows. And when we trust, we don't trust in the information that God has given us. We trust in the God who gives us the information. That means that we know that God knows, and that's enough, even though we don't know right now. And I want you to get that. We are trusting that God knows. That's exactly what John gets. When John gets his revelation, some of the questions about what's going on in his world are being answered. I'm in control. That this is a controlled chaos. This is a controlled burn. This looks like it is just spinning out of control, but it's spinning at the very velocity that I've ordained it to spin. It cannot get out of control because nothing that I ordain gets out of control. Nothing that I've set up can actually be undone. So when you begin to look at this, even looking at our world right now, there's some things that look bleak that are designed to be bleak. This is a bleak time. And when a time is designed to be bleak, guess what it's going to be? It's going to be bleak. But guess what? We also get revelation that God knows who are his. That on Patmos, as John is now meant to be wasting away, as John is supposed to be just moaning and groaning and dying, he's getting a revelation. God is sustaining him even through this time to receive this revelation. Why is he not dead? Because he's called according to God's purpose. God has a purpose for him on Patmos. The reality is we were supposed to get the book of Revelation from John on the Isle of Patmos. We were not going to get it in Cyprus. We were not going to get it in Tunisia. We were not going to get it in Libya. The truth be told, that God had already ordained before there was ever one person who ever came on the earth, before any fern ever appeared on the earth, before the sun became the ruler of the day and the moon became a ruler of the night. Before any of that ever happened, God had already planned that John, this apostle, was going to be on the Isle of Patmos at this time, and he was going to be lifted up that day, and he was going to be able to see the Lord. That's exactly what God had ordained. And what John wanted to do in trying to figure out what was happening with his life, God was saying, you are not out of control. You are where you're supposed to be. Because there's pain and turmoil doesn't mean that you're out of my will. Doesn't mean that somehow you're being punished. Man may try to punish you, but he cannot pull you from the placement that was ordained before the foundation of the world. So when you look at these ancient these scrolls that are there, that there's a lot of information here. And so as you see these scrolls that are written, they're written horizontally. I mean, they're written horizontally and not vertically. And the scrolls are, they're held on the left and the right side. So when you look at this, whatever's read, they begin to roll in the scrolls. So the scrolls are held on the left and they're unrolled on the right side. And so when you look at this, all of this lets us know that this is not some typical book. That as big as the scroll is, it would fill a scroll about 15 feet. You generally can't read a scroll that just rolls out that far. There's a lot that's going on. And over time, over centuries, people have tried to figure out what are the details that are in this scroll. This ancient scroll that is written that John talks about, that he's going to give us some background on, but it still leaves out so much. That's exactly what happens. Listen, the Bible says we only see in part. We know in part. We speak even in part. We think we have a grasp of everything. But the truth be told, there's so much that God has prepared for us that our eyes have not even seen, our ears have not even heard. We have not even conceived of it, what God has in store for us. Why? Because we don't have that capacity to conceive. Listen, there are things that are going to happen with us that we're going to boo-hoo about that are going to be the biggest blessing of our lives. We've done it already many, many times. Things that we thought were just bad things. That we saw the hand of the enemy on, and we could not possibly see any good thing coming from what the enemy has touched. But we forgot that what the enemy means for evil, what the enemy means to do to destroy you, God says, I am able to use that very same thing for good. Because all things working together does not mean that my employee called Satan, because Satan works for God. Satan is under God. He only can go where God ordains and allows him to go. Satan, where are you going? To and fro? I'm just walking around. But have you tried my servant Job? Well, I haven't tried it. I can't. You won't let me. Listen, that's how God works. There are people with hedges of protection around them and have limited the touching ability. You can touch him here, but you can't touch him there. You cannot mess with his soul. And that's just final. That's just it. You can touch his body. That's going to happen. Many are the afflictions of the righteous. You can touch John and put him on the Isle of Patmos. You can all the demonic things that are happening in our world right now. God is allowing certain things because they're a part of his plan, not because God is just shaking his head and just trying to say, what am I going to do? Let me conjure up something that I can do to stop this. No, God is allowing it because it's meant to do what God wants it to do. The shakeups that are meant to happen, that are happening right now, are meant to happen. The things that are calling us to look again at what we have put our trust and our hope in is meant to happen. Those things that are meant to shake us away from believing man over God is meant to happen. Where we get back to praying, where we get back to needing God, not just wanting him the way we wanted him. Right? Not just wanting a God who would fill our pockets, wanting a God who would give us the promotion, wanting a God who would make sure that all prosperity was ours, wanting a God who would get us planes and give us fame. All of those things were what we wanted from God, but we did not need him. We didn't feel the need for him. We could say, I got to get back on that. I've got all this work to do. I've got this great job. I got to get back on Jesus again. I got to get back to praying again. I've got to get back to just worshiping again. I've forgotten so much stuff, just like it was a course that you took some time ago that you just let go of, an old Spanish course. They're like, I can't speak Spanish like I used to. No, that's not the way the relationship with the Almighty God is supposed to be. And John is giving us a reminder here of who he is. He is the one who holds the future in his very right hand. And it's in his strong right hand. Your future is not messed up because of the president of the United States. Your future is not determined because of the Congress. Your future is not determined because of the inactivity of the president or the Congress or the various judiciary boards. Nothing can separate us from the love of God, which means nothing can separate us from the divine ability of God, even in the midst of chaos. So John wrote things that were related to things that were going to happen that must take place. We get afraid sometimes. We read Revelations. People talk about, like, I don't want to read that book, but you need to read that book because we win in the end. It all comes out in the end, but we also get a greater glimpse of God's purpose, even for pain, even for chaos. The thing that you see here is that this is God's will. This is his final settlement of affairs of the world that are in his hand. They are done. It's irrefutable. It cannot be taken away. It will not be changed. Not one jot or tittle of this will be changed. The affairs of the universe are in his right hand. So that means that God has a book that has the history of the universe that is already written. I want you to get that. That what John saw was the writing of all time. What John saw was this plan that came from the mind of God, that was in this huge scroll, that where things were already settled. Your victory was already settled. As if we just have to, I got to find a way to make it work. I got to find a way to make it happen. And John is revealing it's already happened. You just have to wait on the Lord. That's the reality. Listen, I can't give you like the day-to-days of what you need to do. But what I can tell you is that you can't make happen what God has not already written down. You cannot go against what God has already written down. The valley that you are ordained to go through, you have to get excited about the fact that you're ordained to go through it. Not the fact that, listen, it's a valley. Nobody's cheering for the valley, but we cheer for the fact that it's already written that I will fear no evil because you're with me. But what's already written is that there's a table set before me in the presence of my enemies. It's already written. The exciting part that John gets to see is that it's already done. It's already written. God has a history of the world in advance. He's not reacting to the world. He's not reacting to the news. He's not reacting to what we do. God is not moved like we think he is. God is just angry at what he saw. How can God be just in heaven, just raging when he wrote the end first? He said they made the end before he even made the beginning. What's he raging about? Listen, what you're talking about is our concept of God, who is like us. Our concept of a God who doesn't know it all. Listen, when you think of God, you have to think of him through your own imagination, which is limited. We only see in part. You can't know the coolness of a God who knows everything. You cannot imagine the coolness of a God who is not in heaven, just raging at man over the crucifixion of Jesus, knowing that this was a plan I put in motion before the foundation of the earth. I'm the one who initiates the consummation of all things, all history. Satan did not shock me. He was the one who discovered iniquity that was in him. I knew what was there. This was not something that God is not a reactionary God. And we need to get excited about the fact that we serve a God who already knows the famine before it gets there, which means he already knows how to provide. God was the one who knew a famine was coming, and he had already provided to Joseph. We forget how God works. God had already provided Joseph, so Egypt didn't have to worry. But guess what? God had already provided the right person, the right Joseph. Not just any Joseph, but the Joseph that came from this man, Jacob, who was his father, who, when he rises to the position of prince, is not only going to feed Egypt, but he's thinking about his family in Canaan, the right Joseph. So the right Joseph is put in a pit. The right Joseph is now taken to the palace by slavers, sold. The right Joseph is thrown into the dungeon. The right Joseph is overlooked and forgotten. And the right Joseph is promoted at the right time, right before the famine comes. And the right Joseph at the right time, before the anger and the anguish gets too much, God allows the right Joseph to call for his family. God fixes this right Joseph. But it's the right God, this God, who knew all things right were going to happen. And Joseph was in position to take care of his people, these 70 souls who would later turn into Israel. God did all of that, figured all of that out, knew all of that, while people were doing their thing. I threw Joseph in the pit for my reasons. God said, yeah, for your reasons, but I've got a reason. I threw Joseph took him to Egypt for our reasons. The slavers were like, yeah, that's where you get the most money. God was like, well, that's where I want him to be. Well, where's he going to go? I'm going to make sure he goes right into the right house, the Potiphar's house, and he's going to gain favor. But at a time, he's going to be challenged. And he's going to actually make the challenge. He's going to win. Potiphar's wife's going to come after him, but he's not going to go for it. All of these things, I've set all of this up. Nothing is by surprise. God is not saying, but why would Potiphar's house do that? Potiphar's wife do that. Got me thinking Potter's house. But that's what God is doing. He's letting John know there's nothing that's going on that I don't know. There's nothing that's going on with you. No matter how small, no matter who said what about you, no matter what they're saying at the job, no matter how many hours they put on you, nothing is actually outside of God's hand. As you pray, you are simply communicating with God, and you can tell God what he already knows. But you ought to also recognize, God, I know you know. I know you know. And you're holding the scroll. And the beauty of this moment is that there's one and only one who has the right to hold the scroll. And when things are finished, they're sealed. And John says they're sealed with 7 seals. So these are 7 seals fashioned with 7 strings, and they're sealed with this wax knot that's at the end. Now, the scroll has 7, they're sealed, right? With all these things. Each string has a piece of wax connected to it. Now, these are not 7 individual writings, right? These are not 7 scrolls, but they're one scroll with 7 seals, all set upon one scroll. That means that all the scrolls have to be open before they can be read. That means you got to open every seal before you can read this one scroll. Now, the sealing with the 7 seals means that it's hidden. This is revelation that nobody knows. Nobody knows. We give Satan so much credit, like he just knows everything. I guarantee you, if Satan knew everything, he would never have allowed Jesus to die by the hand of man on that cross. If he knew everything, he would have never, ever tested Job like he did, only to find out that the best that he could throw at Job was not going to work when God was touching his soul. When God has a man's soul, he can overcome anything in the natural. There's nothing that Satan can do. When God has your soul, there's absolutely nothing Satan can do to break who you are, because God is in control of your isness. God is the one who has ordained you cannot touch who he is. Pain can sometimes make you say things that you are not. Struggle and anxiety and just confusion can make you act in a way that you are not. And Job acted a way that was not him. And God says, you know what I'm covering? You know what I'm holding on to? I am covering and protecting who you are. I'm protecting the very nature of who you are. You may have said some things that you wish you had not said. There's some things you said that are triumphant, but there were some things you said that were weak. He broke areas in you that was just the surface of you, but never touched who you are, because I'm guarding who you are. Situations and circumstances can make you seem like you are nothing. And God has done it with Jacob, mighty man. I'm telling you, be strong and be courageous. You have this in you. Gideon, you mighty man of valor. As I'm seeing you down here, and struggle will have you down here hiding in a wine press. But when I meet you, I'm saying, mighty man of valor. What are you doing here? God, what are you talking about, mighty man of valor? Yeah, I've held on to who you really are. When I meet you, I give you back who you really are. This is who I made you to be. Your situation is trying to create something different. Your circumstances are trying to create a person that is not really you. And when you look at who we have becoming as a nation, there's so many believers that are angry. There's so many believers that are murderous, that are mad, that he's got to go. We've got to do this. And these are things that are not who we are. We are harboring unforgiveness. It's them and us. And we're starting to buy into the hype of the world. And we're forgetting it's not the them and us, that it is those that are given much who are required much. We're required to be able to handle this time that we've been born into. And it's only with the knowledge that everything is sealed and that only God knows the plan. But the plan is for us. If God be for you, who can be against you? Here's what we know. God is for us. All things are working together for my good. I don't know how this can work together. This seems impossible. This is bringing about tears and anguish. But I have to trust that you know what's in the seal. You know what's under the seal. And that though it's hidden from me, though nobody around me can give me the advice that can help me, here's what I do know. It's not hidden from you. And you know what? I'm not responsible for carrying out your plan. That's one of the great things that John is revealing to us. It's God's plan. It's not yours. He didn't bring you into the meeting when he wrote it. He didn't give you a role to play. Okay, so here's the area I want you to manage. No, you follow commands, but in the end, God's plan is going to work, not because you follow commands, but because he ordered your steps. I'm going to do the whole work. When we give God glory, we don't give him the glory that belongs to him and take the part that belongs to us. The reality is that God has given us directions before we were ever born. He had moved our feet in the direction that we need to go before we were ever born, before Jeremiah became a prophet, before Jeremiah ever agreed to go. God was calling him a prophet when he was saying, I'm just a child. When he was saying, I can't go. God was giving him a message. But I guess, you know what? I think Jeremiah missed it. That God says, listen, I'm going to tell you, your ministry is to be rejected. Your ministry is to be misunderstood, and your ministry is to be unheard. That's your ministry. Jeremiah said, how can I be effective? And everywhere he went, he was just ineffective. He was not effective. And God is saying, good job. And Jeremiah is going and he's crying and he's not effective because he missed it. You have a mission. I'm ordering your steps to failure that you're feeling. You're feeling because you forgot. I've ordered you to go and not be heard. There's some people right now that are defining success by the way the world defines success. But I can tell you right now, that definition will destroy you. Because God's ways are not like our ways. His thoughts are not like our thoughts. As high as the heavens are above the earth are his ways from our ways, and his thoughts from our thoughts. So I want you to get back into this place of recognizing who holds the seal, who holds the scroll in his hand that is sealed from anybody else opening them but him. Who has the plan for the whole world in his strong right hand? And when things look confusing, and they will, and they do, you look to the hills from which comes your help. Because the only one who can make something out of this mess is Jesus. But I can promise you, what John found out was that he is able, and he is willing, and he is going to. Our future is set. There's war, but we win. I hope you receive that today. God bless you. Have an awesome rest of your Thursday.